Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at the ORKZ, specifically transparency and financial management.
Great.
You've shared a bunch of documents with us, meeting minutes, newsletters, even some financial reports.
Yeah.
It seems like you're trying to get a better picture of how things are run there.
Yeah.
Especially with all this talk recently about the operating fees, or OH.
Yeah, the OH is definitely
Yeah.
a focal point, I think, especially in the November 25th issue of the KZ Podcast.
Yeah.
There's a real sense of unease from residents about the lack of financial clarity coming from that subsidiary.
It's not just a vague feeling, are there?
Right.
We see very specific concerns that are being voiced in the meeting minutes from residents.
Absolutely.
Budget overruns, project delays, and a real lack of timely financial reporting.
Yeah.
It all seems to be adding up to a lack of trust.
Mm-hmm.
One resident even said,
Mm-hmm.
it's strange that an OH board member who wasn't directly responsible for this was let go,
Right.
while the person responsible isn't held accountable.
So,
I mean, that's a pretty serious statement, don't you think?
yeah, it really speaks to a perceived lack of accountability
Yeah.
and transparency.
Yeah.
And this is only further fueled by the board's arguments against increased transparency.
Right.
They're claiming that outsiders could see what we are doing. That argument seems a bit weak for a nonprofit housing cooperative, wouldn't you say?
Well, it does seem a little odd. I mean,
All right.
if anyone was truly determined to find out about ORKZ's finances, they could probably already find that information.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a nonprofit here. It's not like it's some big corporation where there's competition and secrets.
No.
So it's not like detailed information would give some outsider competitive advantage.
Exactly. And I think they're missing the point of true transparency, especially for an organization that relies so heavily on resident trust like ORKZ.
Right.
It's not about simply making information technically accessible. It's about proactively sharing that information openly and clearly.
So how can they address this?
Mm-hmm.
The residents are calling for more financial transparency, especially from the OH.
Yeah.
What kind of concrete steps could they take to rebuild that trust and address these concerns?
Well, I think one idea is embracing technology.
Okay.
Imagine if they implemented an AI chatbot that could answer questions about OH finances
Okay.
in real time.
Okay.
Residents could just ask, what's the current status of Project X?
Yeah.
Or how much was spent on materials last month, and get accurate answers immediately.
That's a really interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
It could go a long way in making residents feel more informed and involved
Exactly.
in the financial decision-making.
It addresses that outsider's concern head on.
Right.
Because this AI would be designed for resident access only.
Okay, but what about the accuracy?
Mm-hmm.
Could we really trust an AI chatbot to give reliable financial data?
That's a valid question.
Yeah.
The success of that system would depend on the quality of the data that the AI is using and its ability to interpret it and present it accurately.
Right.
So it would require careful planning and oversight
Yeah.
to make sure the AI is a reliable source of information.
So it's not a magic bullet,
Yeah,
but it's a creative solution
it is.
worth exploring.
Absolutely. And it's just one example of how we can use technology
Right.
to foster greater transparency and accountability.
I would love to hear more about these technological solutions.
Okay.
But before we do that, I want to shift gears a bit and take a closer look at some of the specific financial management issues that were raised in the November 25th COVID current.
Sounds good.
Let's unpack those and see if we can identify some potential solutions.
Okay. So that November 25th issue of the Co-Voter Current, it really paints a concerning picture of the OH's financial management.
It does. Residents point out some pretty serious flaws in the current accordance system.
Right.
It seems like because the reviews happen so late, overspending and project delays are almost inevitable.
Yeah, and you see that with the Technischtdienst, or TD,
Right.
that massive overspending on tools and materials went unnoticed for so long.
Right.
Which highlights the consequences of this delayed review system.
And it's not just about the money.
No.
Those delays have a real impact on the residents' lives.
Right.
Yeah. Projects are stalled.
Yeah.
Improvements are postponed. It creates a sense that things just aren't being managed effectively.
Right. It erodes trust and creates a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
But fortunately, there are other financial management systems that ORKZ could consider.
Okay.
One resident, Hans, actually proposed a SPAR-dual system in that same coavitor current issue.
Oh, interesting. How would that work?
Essentially, funds for major projects would be ring-fenced,
Okay.
so they wouldn't be diverted elsewhere.
Right.
This would give residents a clearer understanding of project timelines and costs, creating more transparency and accountability.
So no more surprise budget overruns or sudden project halts.
Exactly. And it aligns with best practices for nonprofit financial management. Think of it like designated funds or restricted assets, which are common in nonprofit accounting to ensure project transparency and maintain donor trust.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But to switch to a system like that, it would require a pretty significant shift in their current practices, wouldn't it?
It would, but it's a change worth considering.
Right.
And this is where technology can play a role.
Okay.
Remember our discussion about AI?
Yeah.
Imagine if they had AI-powered budgeting and forecasting tools that could predict potential overruns and identify savings opportunities much earlier.
Oh, so instead of reacting to problems after the fact, they could proactively address them.
Precisely.
Okay.
AI could also be used to analyze spending patterns and flag any anomalies, acting as an extra layer of oversight to prevent things like that TD tool debacle from happening again.
That sounds incredibly useful. But we have to remember, AI isn't a magic bullet.
No.
It's a tool.
Right.
And it's only as effective as the data it's given and the human expertise to interpret and act on its outputs.
Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah.
Implementing AI would require a lot of careful consideration, and it wouldn't replace the need for sound financial management practices.
Right.
But it could be a really powerful tool
Yeah.
for enhancing transparency and accountability.
Speaking of accountability, that outsider's argument from the board keeps coming up. It's almost as if they're afraid of being held accountable for their actions.
It's understandable that they might be hesitant to expose everything to public scrutiny.
Yeah.
But I think they're underestimating the residents. A lot of them are savvy enough to understand financial reports,
Right.
ask tough questions, and as we discussed, anyone truly determined to dig into their finances can probably already do so.
Yeah. So their attempts to shield themselves are kind of futile.
Exactly. And it creates an atmosphere of distrust,
Yeah.
which is the last thing they need right now.
So what's the solution then? How can they move beyond this fear of transparency and be more open and accountable?
Well, I think it starts with changing their mindset. They need to view transparency as an opportunity, not a threat.
Right.
It can help them build trust, strengthen their relationship with residents.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
But changing a deeply ingrained mindset isn't easy.
No, it's not.
So what concrete steps could they take to facilitate this shift?
Well, one idea would be to involve residents more in the financial decision-making process.
Okay.
Maybe create a resident-led financial oversight committee that would have access to key financial data, and then they could provide regular reports to the community.
That's an interesting idea. It
Yeah.
would give residents more ownership
Exactly.
and empower them to hold the board accountable.
It would also foster a sense of collaboration and shared responsibility, which is essential for building a strong and sustainable community.
But wouldn't that create a huge administrative burden? Like, how would they manage all the extra communication and coordination?
Well, that's where technology can come in again.
Okay.
Imagine a secure online platform where residents could access financial reports, track project budgets, and even participate in discussions about financial decisions.
So like a virtual town hall dedicated to financial transparency.
Exactly.
Okay.
It would be a centralized hub for all things related to RKZ's finances. And it could make it easier for residents to stay informed and engaged.
Right.
It could even incorporate things like real-time budget trackers and interactive visualizations
Wow.
to make the data more accessible and understandable.
That's really compelling.
Yeah, it would be a big step forward. But it's important to remember that technology is just a tool.
Right.
The real key to success lies in RKZ's willingness to embrace this culture of transparency and accountability.
That's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
Even with the best systems in place, if the mindset doesn't change, true transparency just won't happen.
You're absolutely right. Technology can facilitate transparency, but it can't create it.
Right, it has to come from within. So it really seems like we just keep coming back to this idea of changing their mindset.
Yeah.
It's not just about systems or technology, it's about the entire culture.
Absolutely. It's about moving away from secrecy and control and being more open and collaborative.
But how do you actually make that happen? It seems like a pretty big ask.
It's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think it starts with the leadership.
Okay.
The board needs to show that they're really committed to transparency.
Okay.
They need to be willing to answer those tough questions, admit mistakes, actively seek input from the residents.
We'll lead by example.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
And they need to create clear channels for communication and feedback. You know, residents need to feel like they're being heard.
Right.
That their concerns are taken seriously.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it can't just be top-down communication.
Right. It needs to go both ways.
Yeah.
Residents need to engage in the process, too. Ask questions, share their perspectives, and hold the board accountable.
So it's a two-way street.
It is.
Transparency takes effort from everyone.
Exactly. It's a collective effort.
Thinking about everything we've talked about today, it seems like ORKZ has a real opportunity.
Yes.
By embracing transparency, they could build a much stronger community.
Definitely.
But they need to act now.
I agree. The longer they wait, the more trust they lose.
Right.
The residents are calling for change. It's time for ORKZ to listen.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
The financial management of the OH, the board's resistance to transparency.
Right.
We've really dug into all the complexities.
We have.
But what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Yeah. That's the most important question.
You came to us with all these documents,
Right.
looking for answers about transparency at ORKZ. We've explored different sides of this issue.
Yeah.
Financial concerns, cultural challenges. Now it's your turn to connect the dots.
Exactly.
You've heard the arguments. You've seen the evidence we've talked about, possible solutions. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you agree with the board's fear of transparency? Could Hans's Sperdal system work?
Right.
What about those AI possibilities? These are the questions you should think about as you work with your fellow residents to advocate for the future you want for ORKZ.
Remember, you have a voice.
Yes.
Participate in those resident meetings. Ask the tough questions. And push for a more transparent and accountable ORKZ.
Yeah. Your perspective matters.
It does.
And hey, maybe you'll be the one to convince them to try that blockchain system. Imagine all the possibilities. Even if blockchain isn't the answer, don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Right.
Challenge the way things are. Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's as simple as a lock on the fridge. That's all it takes to start building trust.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.